Hello friends, TechManPat here. Today we are reviewing this. The Roborock S8 Ultra Pro robotic cleaner for your home or your office. I don't know, you could put it in a few different places. But the beauty of this machine is it does it all. Mopping, and it does obviously the vacuuming part. It empties itself and it cleans the mop itself. You only have to maintain the base unit right here for at least a couple of weeks. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Is this machine worth the asking price of nearly 3,000 Australian dollars? How does it fare to the competition out there? Because it is certainly fierce. Is it any good in general? Well, you'll find that out hopefully in this video. Huge thanks to Roborock for sending me this robot for review. Check out the links below if you want to read a little bit more about this device. Let's get started by rolling the intro, liking the video, and subscribing. The Roborock S8 Ultra Pro has a lot going for it. So let's go through what it can do, because I think in a package this size, it's pretty darn impressive. First of all, there is a robot right here that vacuums and mops at the same time. It has two roller brushes underneath the center, which gives it a lot more ferociousness when picking bits up. They're both rubber and they're quite grippy. They have little sticky outy bits and they seem to grab a lot of contents that's on the carpet and on your hardwood floor or your tile. On the back side, we do have a mop. Now this mop is a vibrating mop with two very powerful motors that cycle 3,000 times per minute to clean your floor. Now, it also has one very unique feature, which is the ability to lower both the vacuuming part with the brushes closer to the carpet and lift and lower the actual mop on the bottom, which means it can get a lot more pressure on the hardwood floors and your tiles, but lift off when it goes onto carpet, which means you do not have to swap anything out when you run this vacuum. It'll both vacuum your carpets, your thick pile and your short pile, and your floors, and then mop the floors at the same time. It is a one-stop shop for both mopping and vacuuming. Now, bringing all that together is the station right here. It has an auto empty function. It has a clean water tank and a dirty water tank. At the bottom here, it has a little scrubber that goes along the bottom of the mop of the robot and cleans it, scrubs it, and gets rid of the dirt that's on it as it cleans your home. Every so often, the robot will go back to the station and clean itself. The auto empty station means that everything inside here in this little bucket gets emptied back into here and it's safely stored away. No dust is going to be seen when you clean it, which is a great thing. The dirty water is also tagged away, which is picked up from the bottom over here. There is a little grate that you can clean out every so often. Again, that's the maintenance part. And there is obviously a little bit of dirt that gets left around here as the vacuum keeps going back and out. So it does need a little clean there. Then you've got the clean water bucket right here that will refill the container inside this machine as it mops the floor. It will go back and refill itself when it needs to, depending on the settings that you've set in the app. And of course, we'll look at the app in a moment.
Here is the Roborock app. You're greeted with some basic functionality, routines, continue or start, depending on where your robot is at the time, on off button, and of course, if you press enter, you go into the settings of the robot. You can clearly tell where the robot has been, which floors are actually carpet. So for example, you'll see this has a little crisscross pattern, and of course, this area does not, because that's the hardwood floor. I want to point out some of the things that this robot can actually see. There are obstacles. If you tap on it, obstacle, there is a cable, and it's potentially 84% a wire. So it does have a little bit of a percentage of a guess, but yes, correct. There is a wire there. There is a cable here that's hanging off the side of the wall. There are shoes right here. Absolutely, that's correct. And there are footwear right here under a table. There is an obstacle here. It's actually a toy, but it didn't really recognize it. And over here is actually a step down. And so it's actually saying cliff no-go zone. Fantastic, very, very good. But it's not perfect, obviously. It's not everything that gets recognized, otherwise it's just an obstacle. You can have multiple maps. So you can select home lower level for me, which is the level up here that we saw there. And we can also change the way the map looks. I like this view, but there is a different view. There's a 3D view, which looks really cool. You can see that the walls, you can see where things are. It doesn't quite make sense because this is actually a table and this is just, it's not a wall obviously, and so on. But there is also another view that took about 20 minutes to set up, and that's called the matrix view. And this is a way to view the house where you actually walk around and scan every single part of it. And if we sort of have a look around, you can see that this is the kitchen and that's the lower level. So there's couches there. You can kind of make them out. This is great, but to be honest, it is kind of useless. It doesn't really make sense as to why you'd have this. This is the bathroom. It doesn't help with anything. There's the bed. You can rename and cut rooms up. You can also rotate maps as you see here, put in obstacles and furniture and floor types if you want to manually do so if the robot has not picked it up. I've noticed it has been very, very accurate. I've not had to do it. You can select room cleaning. If you want to, you can select which rooms to clean and also select zones to make sure that it only cleans a said zone. Then when we go into settings, you can check here what scrub intensity and suction power. I usually keep it on balance. It's very good on balance, and especially when you clean it daily, there's no need to go overboard. You can manually tell the dock what to do by pressing in here. We can empty it, we can wash it, or stop doing whatever it's doing, and we can start a full clean over here. If we go back out, we can create our own routine by pressing add, and this allows us to select room by room what it needs to do and what it needs to do in that room. Of course, there are integrations with voice assistants. So if we go into voice control, we can add an Alexa, Siri, Google, and Google Home. Lastly, I wanted to highlight a certain setting area called the reactive obstacle avoidance. In here, there's a setting called less collision mode. This has been extremely helpful for the robot to not just whack into walls. And this is something I've noticed in older robots, even the ones that have a LiDAR, they still tap into the wall. And so the front has a little bit of a sensor when it gets hit. This robot doesn't do that. It is very impressive how it can know when there is a wall and it just stops right before it. The only thing that this causes is sometimes there is a little bit of dirt left in that corner because it just doesn't go right up to it. So it's something to note. If you want to make sure that it goes right up to the corner and kind of hits the wall sometimes or taps it, then turn off less collision mode. There's also a pet setting just in case there is pet obstacles, if you know what I mean. You don't want it to eat that and smear it across the house. That generally only really happens if you've got cats or maybe a puppy.
Now, the power of this machine is 6,000 Pascal units of suction, which is actually the highest I've seen on the market, almost 1,000 more than any other competitor out there. But does it actually translate into real-world performance? Well, from my testing, it was actually about the same compared to another machine that had 5,000 Pascal units of suction. I think what's happening here is, yes, it's got more suction, but it does also have two brushes, a larger area to pick up, and I think the suction gets lost in translation due to that. Nonetheless, it picks up everything you can see with your eye on the carpet, and when I cleaned out the bag here, there was a lot of very fine dust. The best thing about it is as you lift this bag out, it closes itself, it locks itself, and none of that piley little bitsy dust comes out, which is great for those who have allergies. I've said this before, if you have an allergy for dust and grass, if you want to keep yourself from sneezing every day, run one of these daily. And so the benefit of having everything in one is the ability to run this daily without having to do much maintenance. My suggestion with maintenance is every fortnight, give the base and the little box in there a clean up outside, de-dust it, get maybe an air blower, and it'll be good to go. When you run it every single day, you don't need to worry about it for about 4 to 6 weeks with this container right here. The water needs to be filled up every week or so, but again, it's a very easy thing. Put water in, chuck old water out. Now, what about the mopping? The mopping mechanism is a strange one. It puts pressure on the ground and it vibrates, which is interesting compared to other competitors where there are potentially two things that spin or others that just have a mop that kind of like flows across the floor. As I've said in other reviews, that type is useless. The spinny ones are actually pretty good. And this one right here, with the amount of vibration that actually pushes it through, I can literally see the marks disappearing as it goes through. But I will note that from my testing, this isn't going to clean your floors after they've been completely destroyed. It's more of a run it every day and keep it clean. The beauty of it is that you don't have to attach the mopping parts. It will do it at the same time as it vacuums your carpet. I think that's a massive savings of time, but it also means your floors get mopped. With a robot that I used in the past where you had to swap the mopping parts onto it, I never mopped it. I never did. And the one every so often that I did, it was useless because it didn't continue every day. And it's a little bit too much effort. I know robots, you already think there's not much effort in them, but there is a little bit of maintenance and making sure they do the right thing. And this one, you just don't have to think about that. It goes off and does the right thing, both mopping and vacuuming. When I ran this robot, when I was at home, it was quite enough for me to be able to continue work and have phone calls and do my day-to-day activities without having to be annoyed by the sound of this robot. However, when it does get onto carpet, it does boost, and that means that suction does get a little bit more solid, but it was well worth it because as I looked at the carpet, not only did it look nice after the vacuum, I could certainly see that it was clean, and that was probably the most important part for me. As I walked through it with my bare feet, it felt great, and it did it every time. Not just the first time, every time it vacuumed, my carpets felt clean, my floors felt clean. My wife came home and said, "Did you mop?" She was very impressed about the quality of the mop, especially after the fact that as you continue using this robot, your floors will stay clean because it does it at the same time as it vacuums without your intervention. I keep harping on about it, but I think it's a very massive distinction between this robot and any other ones. It has multiple sensors on the side to pick up objects, but the AI logic inside actually recognizes 42 objects. When you open up the app, it says, well, this is a cable, this is a toy, or this is an obstacle, and it knows to go around it. This never got tangled on anything, nor did it get stuck. And the fact that it's lacking a camera at the front, and it doesn't change the fact that it works really, really well with the LiDAR and AI recognition technology that's in there. I'm incredibly impressed how well this navigates obstacles, to the point where I didn't really bother picking things up anymore from the floor because I knew that this robot isn't going to drive over a sock. Let's talk about that battery. I did a massive test between another robot that is a fair competitor to this, and the robot used 50% battery to clean a floor, much better than this robot. But this robot cleaned that floor about 85 to 90% cleanliness and only used 18%, which is a massive difference. The fact that this robot can do a 4-bedroom home with 2 living spaces with both mopping and vacuuming with high suction on 1 battery charge is incredible. Bots that I've used in the past have had to go back and recharge and then get swapped onto the mop and then do it again, but they wouldn't do it on a single charge. You'd have to charge in between. This one does not need to do that. Again, you're saving a lot of your own time, and that's really the reason you're going to spend the big bucks. Now, we've talked about a whole heap of positives about this robot. What about the negatives? Well, it's massive, it's bulky, and it's white. It gets dirty and dusty quite easily. It does need a wipe down every so often. The tanks here are pretty small, and you have to swap them out a little bit more often than other ones that I've seen in the past. The most frustrating thing, however, is that it has 2 sides that it docks in here. And sometimes I found it didn't dock to recharge overnight, which I found pretty frustrating because I wanted to use it again. Instead, what it was doing, it was using the warm heating element here to dry the mop while not charging. As you can see, the mop is out the front, so it goes out, swaps around, does a 180, and goes straight back in to clean the mop. If it's cleaning the mop and drying it, it's not charging. Hence, it has to pull out again and go back in after a 180 turn to then start charging again. The auto washing functionality is amazing. There's an actual roller brush that cleans the bottom of the mop, and it cleans it really, really well. However, I would not trust it for longer than a month. You should still put it through the wash, and it's easily taken off. That brush though at the bottom needs a decent clean every so often. What I'm getting at is the maintenance after the fact, or once a month, every 3 weeks, is quite a bit. There's a lot of crap and dirt that this robot will pick up around the house, and not always does it flow down into the suction into the dirty water tank. There's a lot of dust and sand and other bits and pieces that are left in there. That brush does such a good job that, well, the bottom of this gets very, very dirty. The other thing that I don't like about this is the fact that it has only 1 brush on the side, and that's only on the left side. Most of them have both, so when it drives through an area, it catches both sides and puts it in the center for the vacuuming part to capture it. In this case, it's only the left, and it gives a little bit of an uneven finish on hardwood floors or obviously tiled floors. I think they should have had two. I'm actually surprised why the most expensive device in the lineup doesn't have two brushes on both sides. Of course, when it goes around to the edge of your wall, it will use the left side and it continues doing everything from the left. But there are more efficient ways to finish a room if you could also go from the right. And yeah, that's kind of annoying, even though it still cleans pretty well. However, on my testing, when I threw a whole bunch of sand on the ground, you could clearly see that one side was picking everything up while the other was leaving a smear of sand. And of course, it went back around, but I think it would have done a much better job if it was given two brushes. Continuing on the maintenance bandwagon, the one thing I've noticed is this little bucket here is, well, it's small, sure, and it gets auto-emptied by itself. However, I would suggest to always take an air blaster to the filter, because this filter right here is very, very tiny. It's kind of almost see-through. I haven't seen a small filter like this ever. Most of them are very thick. I will point out no small particles are inside this area up top here, so the filter does seem to work, but I would say this is a very small filter and needs a good, decent clear with pressurized air every so often. So, friends, do I recommend this device? Absolutely. This is the first device that is an all-in-one that I think can actually do all-in-one. The fact that it can both mop and vacuum at the same time without having to its mops swapped out is a huge benefit for somebody who just wants the robot to do it all. If you're buying a robot and you have to empty it every time, you have to swap up the mops, you're kind of defeating the purpose of having something that's automated. And if you're paying thousands of dollars, you want that automation to be as much as possible, because at the end of the day, a lot of people are short on time, and this is going to give you back quite a lot of time. I have to give props to Roborock. They've done really, really well. The ability to run this every day exclusively, both mopping and vacuuming, and of course the base does it all. With the one lacking part to this device right here is that extra brush on the side. I think that's a letdown. Roborock could do better, but I think what they've done here is pretty darn impressive. Now, the price, $2,700 Australian, is high, even compared to the competition. What you're getting for that price is the ability to not have to swap anything out and just press play. Friends, thank you very much for watching. Huge thanks to Roborock for sending me this robot for review. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll catch you all in another video. Thanks for watching, and bye!